Hi and welcome to the fourth and last fight of Tempest Keep. This is Kael'thas Sunstrider together with his advisors. This is also one of the most iconic fights in all of WoW, not just in TBC, as Kael was a major character in the Warcraft lore prior to the launch of World of Warcraft. Now, in TBC, this is probably one of the longest fights, and the reason for this is that it has 5 phases. Other than just having 5 phases, the phase is also very long, and there's a lot of RP going on during this. This means that you have to bring consumables for quite a long fight, mana potions especially. You can bring the Nether Vapor potions or Nether Energy or whatever they're called from all the Shatari dungeons, Mechana, Botanica, Arcatraz. It's a good idea farming these as the kind of free potions for this whole raid. Now, the first 3 phases of this, you will actually face the advisors and not Kael'thas himself. So we'll go through the phases of the advisors first. The first boss you'll encounter is Thaladred. Then the second one will be Sanguinar. The third one will be Grand Astromaster Capernaum. And the last one will be the Master Engineer Felonicus. Now, Thaladred has 2 mechanics. He has Fixate, where he fixates on a random raid member, and if he reaches that target, he will one-shot them. He walks very slowly, which I'll show you in a second, and other than that, he also casts something called Psychic Blow. Psychic Blow is a massive damage attack, also knocks back, and it can hit you within 30 yards. So whoever gets fixated upon, remember to stay more than 30 yards away to avoid this mechanic. Now, the important thing about Thaladred is not so much like his mechanics, like obviously you want to stay away from him. Melee, you don't want to hit him at all, but it's important that you kill him in the right spot. And Thaladred, we want to kill roughly stood over here. So we'll try and kite him to this bit, just to make sure we kill him in the right placement. The reason for this is that later on in phase 3 you'll fight all of these advisors at the same time, and it's nice having them all placed properly to begin with, making sure that they don't interfere with any of the other bosses. But yeah, those are the 2 mechanics on Thaladred. He has to fixate and then he has to Psychic Blow. If you get fixated upon, run away. It's super easy. Second boss, Lord Sanguinar. He looks like a tank, but he actually hits super hard. He has a Thrash ability, which is a double attack. This can often cause crushing blows, so it's a great idea having either a druid or a warrior tank this guy, because he hits super hard. Apart from Thrash, he will also cast Bellowing Roar, very close to Intimidating Shout from warriors, which just fears people around you. So make sure that you have Fear Ward up on the tank and Tremor Totems down in the close vicinity when you're fighting him. Sanguinar, you want to fight here. You can actually, if you fight him right in the doorway, tank him here, outrange his fear by just running past the wall here to gain, to line of sight the fear. Once you've killed off Lord Sanguinar, you will have Grand Astromancer Capernaum. Capernaum is a fire mage and will cast Fireball on the highest threat target and use Arcane Burst, very similar to Crossfire Hand in Cruel's Lair, and Conflagration, which targets a random raid member within 30 yards, and they are then disoriented and move around, very similar to General Drakisath, the last boss in Upper Blackrock Spire, if you have done that fight. The most important thing for this is that we will have a Warlock tank tanking this boss in full fire resistance gear. Melee, again, you will never hit this boss, and you will not be using a melee tank simply because of the Arcane Burst that knocks back. So we tank it with a Warlock. The Warlock will be going over here, trying to place Capernaum roughly around this spot. Stood over here, we'll have a healer stood around here-ish, healing this warlock, and range will just nuke him down. Make sure that you don't over aggro the warlock whilst the warlock is casting Searing Pain on Capernaum. For the last boss, we'll have Master Engineer Felonicus. Felonicus will also be tanked by a regular tank and will be tanked over in this area. Capernaum has Felonicus has two mechanics. Bomb, which isn't super deadly, apart from if you're like super bunched up. It deals like a medium amount of fire damage from him throwing bombs, but nothing major. But his other mechanic is Remote Toy. Remote Toy is a debuff placed on a random target that periodically stuns them for 4 seconds. Now, this stun might not sound super deadly, but if you are fixated upon by Thaladred and you get stunned by Remote Toy, then you could be in a lot of trouble. There is a way to deal with this mechanic, and once all of these advisors are dead, a bunch of weapons will spawn. These weapons need to be killed, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But one of these weapons is Staff of Disintegration. This staff can actually remove the Remote Toy ability and should be picked up by all mages and warlocks in the raid so they can remove this debuff. So yeah, once all these die, we move on to the weapons that spawn. Now, a weapon will spawn corresponding to all of the classes. We have the Staff of Disintegration, which I told you about. This staff, once it's an enemy, will cast Frostbolt and Frost Nova. Nothing major. This should just be picked up by a regular tank. There'll be a Nether Strand Longbow, which is a bow, obviously, and it casts multi-shot and will drop aggro on anyone in melee range, similar to Feign Death. This should be tanked by a hunter, and the hunter will be moving over to this side here, facing it away from the raid so that we don't have multi-shot cast in the raid. The rest of the raid will be bunched up here on the stairs, tanking all of the weapons minus a massive axe called Devastation, which should be tanked here outside of the raid and away from the multi-shot. Melee should never walk close to Devastation, but should focus on killing all the other weapons. There's also a blade called Warp Slicer, has a rend ability, it's not super important. There's a hammer called Cosmic Infuser, this casts heal. This is important for melee and should be their focus. There's a dagger called Infinity Blade. It has the same thrash ability as Sanguinar, but other than that it's not super deadly. And then there's a Phase Shift Bulwark, which will cast Shield Spike that reflects damage. This is obviously important in terms of you not killing yourself, but it's not a super deadly mechanic. Now, you want to, like, after we kill all these weapons, you want to pick up a weapon corresponding to your class. So, all rogues and warriors, you want to pick up the Warp Slicer and you want to pick up an Infinity Blade. All healers, you want to pick up the Cosmic Infuser. All tanks who can wear a shield will pick up the Phase Bulwark, or Phase Shift Bulwark, which has like a defensive mechanic to it. Hunters will pick up the Nether Strand Longbow, gives you a buff. Casters will pick up the Staff of Disintegration. Retribution Paladins, you will pick up Devastation as your two-handed weapon. So yeah, we'll group up all of the weapons, minus the bow, which will be facing this way, over here, and the axe, which we'll be keeping here. Once you kill all of, or after 2 minutes, when the weapons have spawned, Kael will revive all of his advisors, so we need to be fairly swift on killing these weapons. And then we'll fight all of the advisors at the same time. It's important that we kill all of these weapons quickly, and then have the tanks move to their corresponding spots. So we have our Warlock safely placed down here, ready to pick up Capernaum, together with his healer. We have a tank over here, ready to pick up Sanguinar, together with his healer. We'll have a tank here ready to pick up Felonicus together with his healer, and Melee, you will start killing Sanguinar, and then you'll move on to Felonicus. Range, you'll start killing Thaladred, and then move on to Capernaum. Melee should never move close to Sanguinar, and never close to Thaladred, and never close to Capernaum. Range, if you kill your targets before melee are done, then you can help out with whichever is left. So that's basically the first 3 phases of the fight. This will take a long time during TBC Classic, but should be very doable. It is probably the hardest bit of the fight, especially getting the pull correct and getting positioning in place beforehand. If you get the positioning down and people are stood in the right spots, it should be fairly straightforward, as the mechanics aren't difficult, and once you kill one advisor, the fight gets progressively easier as you go along. Now, you have 3 minutes to kill all of the advisors after Kael resurrects them, and once that happens, he will engage in the fight. If you haven't killed them by then, you need to kill off the remaining advisor, and you will have to deal with the mechanics as well from the weapons. So if there's still remote toy on someone, you have to obviously remove that with Staff of Disintegration. So in phase 4, Kael himself will activate. He has Fireball. This should be interrupted by all melee classes and should be focused upon. It's just a standard Fireball, much like Aran, and he's not actually spell locked once he casts it, but he'll try and continuously cast it after a 1.5 seconds or something. He'll also summon a Phoenix ad, similar to that of Alar. However, this one will die on its own, so there's no need to DPS it. Once we face Kael, we'll have the main raid stood here, center platform, and we'll have an off tank with the Phoenix stood over here. This should be a Paladin tank. And we'll have the rest of the raid stood right here, away from the Phoenix, but not so far away that they can't actually hit it. The reason for this is, once the Phoenix dies, it will turn into an egg. This egg needs to be killed quickly so we don't get overrun by Phoenix at some point. Kael will also cast Flame Strike, again similar to the mage spell. Move out of that. Easy peasy. Now, one of the big mechanics of the Kael fight is that he will cast something called Shock Barrier. Whenever he casts this, he puts a shield around himself that makes him immune to interrupts. This needs to be burnt through. This is a shield you can target, very similar to the arcane mobs near Curator in Karazhan. So you just have to burn through that shield. Once he casts the shield, he will also cast Pyroblast, which is a 4-second cast that deals 50,000 damage. For this, you will need a warrior tank or a paladin tank with phase shift bulwark. This has an active effect that absorbs 100,000 damage, so you can take the first one. And you will have to have shock barrier down by the time the second Pyroblast is cast and interrupt the second one. After 3 successful Pyroblasts are cast, or right after a Pyroblast is interrupted, Kael will cast Arcane Disruption, and this is very similar to Repentance on Maiden of Virtue in Karazhan. You can avoid this mechanic by walking into Flame Strike just immediately before you see this being cast, and then take a tick of the dot, move back out, get yourself free. This should be done. This is also why we should be fairly stacked, close to a Flame Strike, but not on top of it. The last mechanic of Phase 4 is Mind Control. This is cast periodically throughout the fight, where multiple raid members are mind controlled. Once Mind Control comes up, we want mages to sheep, we want warlocks to use fear, and we want all of the melee to pick up the Infinity Blade, equip it in your offhand, as Infinity Blade immediately removes Mind Control. So this will be Melee's role during this encounter, is to free people from mind control after they've been CC'd. It's extremely important that you CC and don't DPS during this phase, as it can really fuck up the fight if you have someone just like free casting on you of your own raid members. Not just because of the mana, but also because of the damage that it will be dealing out. There's a lot going on, so be quick on those. Fears and Sheeps, instantly. Stuns from Paladins can also work, and melee, you need to be quick on swapping to targets. Once Kael hits 50%, he will stop using Mind Control, he'll stop using Pyroblast, but everything else is still in play. So he still uses Shock Barrier, he still uses Summon Phoenix, and he still uses Flame Strike and Fireball. He will, however, gain 3 new abilities. One is called Gravity Lapse, which is the central mechanic of Phase 5, and it's like the true power phase, where he will launch everyone up in the air. Once you're up in the air, he will start casting something called Nether Beam. This is very similar to the I-Beam on Chthon, and it hits people, it hits one player, and then it will jump to the nearest within roughly 15 yards. So people need to be spread out, not just horizontally here, but also vertically. If you land during this phase, whilst you still have Gravity Lapse on, you'll be taking a lot of arcane damage and thrown back up into the air, so don't hit the floor. However, once Gravity Lapse ends after 30 seconds, you will drop to the floor again and start take fall damage if you're like landing from high up. So you want to hover roughly in this distance where you don't take any damage, like what, 10 yards above ground. So you just have like a little drop. This also lowers the not the fall damage, but also the downtime on you killing Kael. Once you're in the air, he will also cast a Nether Vapor. This is a gas cloud that he will put in the air that reduces maximum health by 10% per tick, I believe it is, and lasts for roughly 1 minute. This is super deadly if you think about all the other mechanics on top, so try not to stay in these clouds and just move out, but don't move too close to each other. Use /range 15 just to make sure that you're not like accidentally killing someone. This is a super stressful part of the fight, and it's long into it, so this might have to take a few minutes or a few attempts before we kill it, but it's a super intriguing fight. It's one of the best, and I'll try and see if I can't show you all of the mechanics. So I'm just going to activate the boss here. So here we'll start with Thaladred. It's a bit of role playing. And yeah, that's basically why this fight takes so long. So I'm sure you can see with all these phases and like all these things happening in between, there's at least 5 minutes of wait time during some of this, which is a big part of this fight. So conserve your mana. Melee, you can pump all the way through this with your cooldowns as you don't have mana. So this is Thaladred. Look at this, super easy to like run away from. And you just want people to like nuke him down. So we want to kill him over here, around this spot. And after that we have Sanguinar. This axe, this is also what Devastation looks like. It will be the weapon spawning once we get to that phase. That's Bellowing Roar, as you see, it has a cast time. Want a tank to back up all the way in here. If you can move him in like this. So like so. So once he's casting Bellowing Roar, you can just move around this side and should be fine. But yeah, we kill Sanguinar here. And then we get Capernaum. Healers will get aggro through this, so it's a good idea to have a hunter misdirect Capernaum just onto the Warlock, just to make sure that we actually get this right. Don't go nuts on damage until it's called. This is Conflagration, as you can see, disoriented. This also deals damage to anyone close to me, so don't stand close to people with Conflagrate. Other than that, not a super interesting mechanic. So this is roughly where she should die. making sure that melee have room to move over here, also to kite in case Thaladred gets too close to someone. Here we have Felonicus. He can be a little bit hard to move because he's casting bombs, but you can actually like range him. This is the remote toy I was talking about, but you kill him roughly here. Again, it's a nice idea having a hunter misdirect, at least for the initial killing, just to make sure that everything gets placed properly. So I'm stunned now. I want to kill off all the weapons and then loot them. As you can see here, Cosmic Infuser. This is actually also what will happen in TPC Classic. Reduces damage taken on some of your heal effects. It's super nice. The Infinity Blade, as you can see here, Mind Control when a melee ability lands, dispels. Devastation, just increases movement speed and your melee attack power. Big for all of the red paladins. Shield, absorbing 3 damage. This is obviously not the right number. It's 100,000 in classic TBC, and then the Warp Slicer just increases movement, increases melee attack speed. Super nice for all of the melee classes. We'll kill the bow. So here, bow. Increases crit damage bonus and increases physical damage taken by the target by 5% for 30 seconds. So, and this effect stacks. So it's nice having these weapons. You definitely need to equip them once you loot them. And remember to loot them. Staff of Disintegration. Again, granting immunity to stun, silences, disorient effects. So now we just wait for Kael to revive all of these. You'll see all of the advisors respawn. Just casting the revive here. So we kill them off. That was the knock away from Thaladred. As you can see, he's a massive knockback. Let's see if actually he damages me in retail. Oh, he casts a silence. Okay, so he doesn't actually hit me that hard, but he is still super annoying. But yeah, in classic TBC, like I said, you will die if he gets to you. So for this, we'll keep him here. These Phoenixes, that's the Flame Strike, get out of that. It's obviously difficult getting out of it if you're stunned. That's what an egg looks like once your Phoenix dies. Interrupting the fireball here. This is Arcane Disruption. So yeah, this is basically the fight. You just you want to keep him here. You want to damage him down a little bit. Want to deal with these fireballs. Move away from Flame Strike. That's killing the Phoenix eggs. And then once you hit 50%, you get into the last phase, the true power. We will group up here at the bottom of the stairs, and then we'll fan out once you get thrown up in the air. He doesn't do any abilities once you're in the air, apart from the Nether Beam. It's only on the ground that he will cast Flame Strike and Fireball. He'll also do the cloud thing, and I'll show you the clouds. Again, like you can see, there's a lot of graphical things going on, and it can be quite hard to get your bearings during the air phase. Like, it's difficult finding out if someone's 15 yards below you. So use the slash range 15, just to make sure. Here we go. Gravity Lapse. Thrown up in the air. And you could potentially use all this. Like, mages who want to can go high up to try and make sure that you don't die. Just before you land, you can use Blink. It's a lot of mana, though. I'm not sure you want to waste it on that. You could also use Slow Fall but you don't want to slow fall too high up, simply because it's yeah, it's just a long way to drop them. These clouds, they deal damage if you're close to them, and once the gravity lapse ends, you fall down, rinse, repeat, same as phase 4. Then you get a few seconds of DPS here. Get to kill a Phoenix, get to kill an egg, kill the boss, get some loot. Yeah, that was the guide for Tempest Keep. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in game. If you can't find what you need on the written guide on the website, you can also reach out and just ask for clarification. Take care.